All right. So this time, you've given us quite a challenge.
Yeah.
With all this material on transhumanism,
Yeah.
academic excerpts and news articles, even some historical and philosophical pieces.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. So let's try to sort through this. You know what transhumanism really means? And the ethics,
Yeah.
all the ethical dilemmas it brings up, and what it might mean for your life in the future.
Right. So it's not just about living longer, although that's a big part of it.
Right.
Transhumanism is really more about pushing the boundaries of what it means to be human.
Yeah.
Like enhancing our intelligence.
Yeah.
Merging with technology. Maybe even reaching a point where aging is a choice, not an inevitability.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. But hold on. You mentioned merging with technology.
Yeah.
I immediately think cyborgs.
Right!
Which sounds a little more like science fiction than reality.
Well, what's interesting is in some ways, we're already cyborgs. One of the sources argues that even language itself is a technology. It shapes our thoughts, governs our behavior, allows us to build complex societies.
Whoa. I never thought about language that way. But it makes sense. We are shaped by the tools we use, even something as basic as language.
Exactly. And as technology advances, that line between human and machine keeps getting blurrier.
Right.
Take vaccines, for example.
Huh.
They modify our immune systems,
Right.
make us more resilient to disease. Some of your sources talk about RFID chips implanted for various purposes.
Yeah.
Even living tattoos that act as sensors for our bodies and the environment.
Okay, now living tattoos as sensors. That's just cool. But are we talking about a future where everyone's walking around with bionic limbs and computer chips in their brains?
Not necessarily. While some transhumanists do envision radical transformations like that,
Right.
others are focused on less drastic enhancements.
So it's more of a spectrum than one fixed vision.
Absolutely. And one of the key areas of focus within transhumanism is using data to optimize our health and well-being. Think about it. If data is the new oil, then our personal biological data might be the key to unlocking a whole new level of human potential.
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
Right.
We've all heard the phrase, data is the new oil. But what does that actually mean in this context of transhumanism?
Well, one of your sources argues that just like those who controlled the oil industry held immense power and wealth,
Right.
those who control and understand data will have a similar advantage in the future. They argue that data, especially personalized biological data, could revolutionize healthcare.
So we're talking personalized medicine, treatments tailored to our individual genetic makeup.
Yeah.
Maybe even predicting health issues before they even arise.
Exactly. It's like taking predictive maintenance, which we use to anticipate problems in machines,
Right.
and applying it to our own bodies. But it's not all rosy.
Uh-huh.
This same source highlights that as we generate more and more personal data, we're also creating a sort of internet panopticon. Our every move, every choice, every heartbeat could be tracked and analyzed.
That sounds a little creepy, to be honest. Like, where does privacy fit into this data-driven future?
That's one of the big ethical dilemmas we have to grapple with. There's this tension between the potential benefits of using data to improve our lives and the risks to our individual freedom and autonomy. And these concerns aren't just theoretical. Your articles about China's social credit system and the data collection practices of companies like Google and Facebook, that shows this is already happening.
It's a tough balancing act, for sure. We want the benefits of technology, but not at the cost of becoming slaves to the algorithms.
Exactly. And it's not just data we need to consider. Advances in gene editing technologies like CRISPR-Cas9 are giving us the power to literally rewrite the code of life.
Okay, now we're getting into the really mind-blowing stuff. Gene editing.
Yeah.
That's where we move beyond just augmenting ourselves and start actually changing what it means to be human on a fundamental level.
Right, and the potential applications are incredible.
Yeah.
From treating diseases and slowing down aging to potentially creating human-animal hybrids with desirable traits. The possibilities seem endless.
Human-animal hybrids.
Yeah.
You're not kidding about pushing the boundaries here. What kind of hybrids are we even talking about?
Well, one of your sources highlights the incredible regenerative capabilities of the axolotl.
Right.
Imagine being able to harness that power to regrow damaged tissue or even limbs in humans.
Wow.
They also talk about a type of jellyfish, Turritoxis dohrnii, which is essentially immortal.
Oh, wow.
It can revert back to its polyp stage. essentially starting its life cycle all over again.
Wow, so we're talking about potentially extending human lifespans drastically, maybe even achieving a kind of immortality.
Well, it's still very much in the realm of theory, but the point is gene editing opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
Yeah.
But with that power comes a whole lot of ethical questions.
Right.
Where do we draw the line? A big one is the issue of germline modifications,
right.
Changes to DNA that are passed down to future generations. That's where we get into the controversial territory of designer babies and choosing specific traits for our children.
Whoa, now we're getting into some serious ethical dilemmas. It's one thing to use gene editing to treat diseases, but using it to enhance our children's abilities or select for certain traits feels like we're crossing a line.
Right. It raises all sorts of questions about parental rights.
Yeah.
The potential for creating genetic hierarchies and even the very definition of what it means to be human. And this is where the conversation about the ethics of enhancement gets even more complex. What's interesting is these ethical questions about enhancement, they aren't just limited to gene editing.
Yeah.
One of the sources argues we need to consider other forms of enhancement.
Okay.
Like education within the same ethical framework.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We often see genetic engineering as this,
right.
radical new thing.
Yeah.
But we've been shaping our children's minds through education for centuries.
Exactly. And this source asks, are they really that different?
Yeah.
Both involve parents making choices that will have a huge impact on their children's lives.
Right.
And both can be used for good or for ill,
right.
depending on the intentions and methods.
I see what you mean. But I still feel like changing someone's genes versus, say, sending them to a better school, those are fundamentally different.
Well, one key difference that's often brought up is reversibility.
Yeah.
Genetic modifications are often seen as permanent, while education can be adapted or even undone over time.
That's a good point, but didn't one of the sources suggest that even genetic modifications might not be as irreversible as we once thought?
You're right. New technologies are emerging that could potentially reverse or rewrite genetic changes. And as we talked about earlier, even a condition like deafness, which was once considered permanent,
right,
can now be mitigated with technologies like cochlear implants.
So maybe that line between genetic and educational enhancement isn't as clear as we assume. It seems like the ethics really comes down to the principles we apply, not just the technologies.
I think that's a really insightful observation, and it leads to another crucial question that comes up in your research, the concept of moral bioenhancement.
Okay, this is the one that really threw me for a loop. Are you saying that we can actually use technology to make people more moral? How would that even work?
It's a complex idea, no doubt. Some proponents of moral bioenhancement believe that we can use technology to target specific brain regions or neurochemicals associated with empathy, altruism, moral reasoning.
So like a pill to make you a better person. It seems a little too easy, doesn't it?
It certainly raises some red flags, and it's important to distinguish between direct interventions, like using drugs or brain stimulation, and indirect approaches, like using technology to promote education and critical thinking skills.
Okay. I mean, the indirect approaches seem a lot more palatable. Right. But even then, are we really justified in using technology to, manipulate people's moral compass?
Well, that's where the debate gets really heated.
Yeah.
Some argue that if we have the technology to make people less violent or more compassionate, we have a moral obligation to use it. Others worry about the potential for coercion and the erosion of individual autonomy. Who gets to decide what constitutes moral behavior? What if these technologies are used to enforce conformity or suppress dissent?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope. Once you start down the path of engineering morality, where do you stop?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it raises these really deep questions about free will and moral responsibility. If someone's moral behavior is influenced by technology, are they truly acting freely?
It sounds like we're venturing into some pretty philosophical territory here.
Right.
But these aren't just abstract thought experiments anymore. With advances in biotechnology and neuroscience, these questions are becoming increasingly relevant to our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about individual ethics either. Moral bioenhancement raises all sorts of social and political concerns. Imagine a world where governments mandate moral enhancements for their citizens, or where social status is determined by your level of moral purity, as measured by some technology.
That's getting into some dystopian sci-fi.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But these are the kinds of scenarios we need to consider if we're serious about these potential consequences of transhumanism.
Right.
It's not just about technological progress. It's about what kind of future we want to create for ourselves and future generations.
You've hit on a crucial point. It brings us back to that central dilemma we've been discussing, the potential benefits of transhumanism versus the risks. One of the biggest risks, and it was highlighted in this material, is the potential for creating a more divided and unequal society.
Exactly. And we need to be honest about how these transhumanist technologies could worsen those existing inequalities.
Wow.
Imagine a world where only the wealthy can afford life-extending technologies or cognitive enhancements.
Right.
The gap between the haves and the have-nots could become even more extreme.
It's a chilling thought. Instead of just like economic disparity.
Right.
We'd be looking at a biological and a cognitive divide.
Right.
A whole new kind of class system based on who has access to these enhancements.
And it's not just about access to technology.
Right.
We have to think about the potential for discrimination based on genetic traits or levels of enhancement.
Yeah.
What if employers start screening candidates based on their genetic profiles?
Right.
Or imagine a world where social status is determined by your level of cognitive ability as measured by some futuristic IQ test.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope, leading to a new kind of caste system.
Right.
Based on biology and technology. And one of the sources talks about this concern that transhumanism could lead to a totalitarian future where these enhancement technologies are used to create social hierarchies and undermine the value of natural human diversity.
Yeah.
It's a cautionary tale we need to take seriously.
Absolutely. It really makes you think twice about the downsides of pursuing these technologies without considering their social impact.
It definitely makes me rethink my initial,
Right.
enthusiasm for all this. It's clear that these technologies have incredible potential, but we need to be incredibly thoughtful about how we develop them and deploy them.
I couldn't agree more. It's not just about establishing ethical guidelines for scientists and engineers.
Yeah.
It's about having a broader societal conversation about the kind of future we want to build.
Right.
What does it mean to be human in an age of such radical technological change?
Yeah.
What values do we want to preserve, and what possibilities do we want to embrace?
These are huge questions.
Yeah.
And I don't think there are any easy answers.
You're right, but that's what makes this whole conversation so important. We need to grapple with these questions now,
Yeah.
before these technologies become so pervasive that they reshape our world without our consent.
This has been such an eye-opening discussion. I feel like I've gained a much deeper understanding of the complexities of transhumanism.
Yeah.
But I also feel like we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore.
I agree. We could dive deeper into the specific technologies being developed, the philosophical underpinnings of transhumanism, the different ethical and social implications. And of course, we can't forget about the potential impact of these technologies on our personal lives.
Exactly. These aren't just theoretical abstractions. They have the potential to transform our health, our relationships, our very sense of self.
Right.
What would our relationships even look like in a transhumanist future? How would we work? How would we play? How would we experience the world?
These are all fantastic questions, and honestly, we don't have any definitive answers yet.
Yeah.
But that's what makes this whole topic so fascinating. Exploring the unknowns, considering the possibilities, grappling with the ethical dilemmas. It's all part of the journey.
It's like we're collectively writing a science fiction novel, but with real-world stakes.
I love that analogy. It really captures both the sense of possibility and the weighty responsibility that comes with these powerful technologies. We have the opportunity to shape the future, but we also have the responsibility to consider the consequences of our choices.
So where do we go from here? We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so many unanswered questions. What are your thoughts?
I think a good next step would be to delve deeper into some of the specific technologies being developed. We've talked about gene editing and cognitive enhancement in a general sense.
Right.
But there are so many fascinating advancements happening in fields like AI, nanotechnology, and biotechnology.
Yes, let's get into the nuts and bolts of how these technologies work and what their potential applications might be. I'm really curious to learn more about the cutting edge research.
And as we explore those advancements, I think it's crucial to also consider the different perspectives on transhumanism. We've focused on the more mainstream views so far, But there are definitely some critical voices out there raising important concerns about potential risks and unintended consequences.
Absolutely. Hearing those critical perspectives will help us develop a more balanced and nuanced understanding of the promises and the perils.
Exactly. And as we continue, I think it's essential to keep circling back to that central question. What does it mean to be human in a world where technology is increasingly blurring those lines between our bodies and our minds and the machines we create?
That's the question that really resonates with me. It's not just about the technology itself.
Right.
It's about how we choose to use it and what those choices say about our values and aspirations.
You've hit the nail on the head. Ultimately, those choices will shape the future of humanity, so it's crucial that we engage in these conversations thoughtfully and with a sense of responsibility for the world we're creating.
Well said. I'm excited to continue this journey with you. Let's see where this deep dive takes us. This deep dive into transhumanism has been, really a wild ride. It's clear that we're talking of a future that could be so exciting and full of potential, but it also comes with these, serious risks and ethical challenges.
Yeah, it's a bit like standing at the edge of uncharted territory, The possibilities seem endless.
Yeah.
But there's also this, sense of uncertainty, maybe even a little trepidation about what lies ahead.
Exactly. And we've been talking about all these amazing technological advancements, but I keep coming back to this question, what would it actually feel like to live in a transhumanist future? How would it change our relationships? Our sense of purpose, even our understanding of what it means to be human.
Those are the big questions, aren't they? And to be honest, we don't have all the answers yet. But one of your sources made a point that really stuck with me. They warned about falling into this trap of utopian thinking.
Yeah, I remember that. They argued that the pursuit of a perfect society, even with the best of intentions,
Right.
can sometimes lead to dangerous outcomes.
Exactly. And I think that's a crucial insight as we navigate these uncharted waters. It's not about blindly embracing technological progress.
Right.
It's about approaching it critically, asking these hard questions, and recognizing that there are always trade-offs.
We can't assume that just technology will solve all our problems or lead us to utopia.
Yeah.
There will always be unintended consequences, and we need to be ready to deal with those.
Right, and that's why it's so important to have these conversations now, to engage with the ethical and social and philosophical implications of these technologies before they become so pervasive that we lose control,
Yeah, it's about taking ownership of our future, not just letting technology dictate what it means to be human. We need to be actively shaping this future, making conscious choices about the kind of world we want to live in.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, transhumanism isn't just some distant future scenario. These technologies are already impacting our lives in huge ways.
Yeah, that's true. From advances in healthcare and, assistive technologies to the ways we connect and communicate through our devices, we're already living in a world that's shaped by these transhumanist ideas.
So it's not about if we'll embrace transhumanism, it's about how. And that's a choice we all have a say in,
Yeah.
by staying informed, asking questions, engaging in these thoughtful discussions about the promises and the perils of these technologies. We can all work together to shape a future that, aligns with our values and our aspirations.
This deep dive has really given me a whole new perspective on transhumanism. It's not just about living longer or becoming superhuman. It's about fundamentally rethinking what it means to be human in an age of such unprecedented change. And, this conversation is only going to get more and more relevant and urgent as time goes on.
Absolutely. And for all of you listening, stay curious. Keep asking these questions, and don't be afraid to imagine the possibilities that might seem impossible right now, because what was once science fiction can quickly become science fact.
Well said. This has been a really insightful conversation, and we hope it's given you a lot to think about as you continue to explore this fascinating world of transhumanism.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
And to everyone listening out there, thanks for joining us. Keep those questions coming, stay curious, and let's keep the conversation going.